Hi, Bill Doherty here, co-founder of the Doherty Relationship Institute and developer of Discernment Counseling, which is a specialized way to work with couples on the brink of divorce, where one is leaning out of the marriage, the other wants to save it. And it's a very particular protocol where we talk to people together and separately. Where we help people is to discern on three different paths. We'll call path 3 is a commitment to try to reconcile in couples therapy. Path 2 is the divorce separation path. And then path 1 is neither of those, to neither do therapy nor divorce, but to be on a holding pattern. And in this video, I want to talk about path 1, which we've learned over the years is a really important part of the approach. Frankly, when I put it in there, it was more like, okay, well, you need to have neither of the above, and so we'll call it path 1. And a lot of times in the intake process, the leaning out spouse will say, well, path 1, I can't stay here, so we either have to divorce or improve things. And the leaning in one, they want to do therapy, so the relationship is better and they're out of the danger zone. So it's not uncommon for people coming in when the counselor lays out the path, say, oh, path 1 is off the table. That's just miserable. But what we've learned over time is that even though a lot of the conversation in discernment counseling is between divorce versus the therapy path to reconcile, path 1 is very important to have in your back pocket to remind people of under a couple of circumstances. One is that somebody is not eager to divorce, but really doesn't have the energy and motivation for an all-out effort in therapy. And discernment counseling is partly created for purposes of not doing half-hearted couples therapy. And so you can mention, let's say you're into the third or fourth session, that, it sounds like you're not eager to divorce anytime soon, but, and we've been talking about the therapy, what it would be like. At discernment counseling, you're doing all of your skills, and their heart's really not there. Then you could say, well, this is what path 1 is potential alternative. And that would be, you don't want to divorce now, you're not really at a point of readiness for the work. Sometimes what's happened is they've softened a bit, the leaning out spouse has softened a bit, they've seen the relationship in a more complex way, they've understood they're a part of it in some way. Sometimes their spouse has sort of calmed down a bit, the tension's gone. And so they go, oh, okay, maybe path 1. And then the job is to see if the leaning in one will accept it. So path 1 can be an alternative when somebody's not motivated to divorce or to do the couples therapy. The other time is when somebody is just paralyzed. They're just anguished and paralyzed. They just can't make any decision. The first example I gave you was somebody who's they're there. They're able to explain, articulate what I just said. There's other folks, they're just paralyzed. They're just up and down and in and out. And if there wasn't a 5-session limit, you could go on forever. And so path 1 gets to be, okay, you've done the discernment work. You hope to originally decide between path 2 and path 3. You're not there. And so why don't we kind of review what you guys have learned, and essentially this is path 1. And I'm here if you want to pick this up again. And so this becomes a way to not force a decision. So sometimes what I say to somebody who just can't decide, the leaning out one. Or maybe they flipped, maybe the leaning out's leaning in and the leaning in is leaning out, and they can't decide. What I say is, the fact that we have 5 sessions for this process doesn't mean you have to make a decision by the 5th session. That's just our, that's our number of sessions. And so there's no pressure from me that you have to decide something. And so path one becomes the default as they proceed. Now you have to help the other spouse try to come around to that. Now they may not want to. I mean, the other spouse may. That's when you get the leaning in, sometimes switching to leaning out, because they have decided they're pretty miserable and they want the therapy. And so that sometimes, it becomes a path two discussion at that point. But anyway, my point is that path one, which started out as a sort of residual category, and in our early research was just 12% of the outcomes, now has moved up into the low 20s as we've come to see the advantages of not forcing a decision. Certainly we don't want to force a decision for a premature divorce because somebody isn't prepared to do therapy right now. And also because discernment counseling was developed in part to prevent half-hearted, likely to fail couples therapy. I would rather have a couple settle on path one rather than sort of limp their way without a lot of motivation and looking at self into the path three therapy. So this video is about singing the joys of path one.